Wanderer of the Wasteland, Chapter 12, Part 2. "Wansville, you see you're something of a man I might have been," said Dismukes hesitatingly. Excuse me. "Oh no," Dismukes protested at him. "You are a prospector, honest and industrious, and wealthy now, almost ready to enjoy the fruits of your long labors. Your life has been a great object, but I'm only a wanderer of the wasteland." "Aye, and therein lies your greatness," boomed the prospector, his ox eyes dilating and flaring. "I'm a selfish pig-a-digger in the dirt for gold. My passion has made me past men and women too who's needed help, riches, dreams, but you once fell out there in the loneliness and silence of the wastelands. You got God. I said you would. I've met other men who had." Excuse me. No, replied Adam. "You're wrong. I don't think I've found God. Not yet. I have no religion, no belief. I can't find any hope out there in the desert. Nature's pitiless and indifferent. The desert is but one of her playgrounds. Man has no right there. Notice, Mukes, I haven't found God." "Ah, you have, but you don't know it," responded Dismukes with more composure, and he began to refill a neglected pipe. "Well, I didn't mean to fetch up such talk as that. You see, when I do fall in with a prospector once in a month, the Sundays I never talk much, and then it'd be to ask him if he'd seen any float lately or panned any color. But you're different. You make my mind work. In Wansville, sometimes I think my mind has been crowded with a million thoughts, all crying to get free. That's the desert. A man's got to fight the desert with his intelligence, or else become less than a man. And I always did think a lot if I didn't talk." "Well, I'm that way too," replied Adam. "But a man should talk when he gets the chance. I talk to my burros and to myself just to hear the sound of my voice." Ah, exclaimed Dismukes with a deep breath. He nodded his shaggy head, and Adam's words had struck an answering chord in his heart. "You've tried for gold here?" queried Adam. "No, I was here first, just after the strike, and often since. Water's all that ever drew me. I'd starve before I'd dig for gold among a pack of beasts. I may be a desert wolf, but I'm a lone one." "They're coyotes, and you're the gray wolf. I liken most every man I meet to some beast or creature of the desert." "Yeah, you're right. The desert stamps a man, and once fella stamped you with the look of a desert eagle. Ha! I ain't flattering to either of us, am I? Me, a starved gray wolf, hunting alone, mean and hard and fierce, and you, a long, lean-headed eagle, with that look of you like you were about to strike. Gone." Well, there's no understanding the work of the desert, the way it develops the living creatures. They all have to live, and living on the desert is 1,000 times harder than anywhere else. They all have to be perfect machines for destruction. Each seems so swift that he gets away, yet each is also so fierce and sure that he catches his prey. They live on one another, but the species doesn't die out. That's what stumps me about the desert. Take the human creatures. They grow fiercer than animals. Maybe that's because nature did not intend man to live on the desert, and it ain't no place for a man. Nature intended these classes of plants and these species of birds and beasts to live, fight, thrive, and reproduce their kind in the desert. But men can't thrive nor reproduce their kind here." "How about Indians who lived in the desert for hundreds of years?" asked Adam. "What's a handful of Indians, and what's a few years out of the millions of years that the desert's been here, just as it is now? Nothing. Nothing at all. Once filled, there will be men coming to the desert, down there below the Salton Sink, and in other places where the soil is productive, and they'll build dams, storage places for water. Maybe a lot of fools will even turn the Colorado River over the desert. They'll make it green and rich and, like the Bible says, blossom as a rose. And these men will build ditches for water and reservoirs and towns and cities and cross the desert with railroads. They'll grow rich and proud. They'll think they've conquered it. But poor fools, they don't know the desert. Only a man who has lived with the desert of much of his life can ever know. Time will pass and men will grow old and their sons and grandsons after them. 100 and 1,000 years might pass with the fruitfulness still in the control of man. But all that is only a few grains of time in the endless sands of eternity. The desert's work will have been retarded for a little while. But the desert works ceaselessly and with infinite patience. The sun burns, the frost cracks. The avalanche rolls, the rain weathers. Slowly the earth crust heaves up into mountains, and slowly the mountains wear down, atom by atom, to be the sands of the desert. And the winds, how they blow forever and ever. What can avail against the desert winds? They blow the sand and sift and seep and bury. Men will die, and the places that knew them will know them no more. And the desert will come back. That is well, for it is what God intended. God and nature then with you are one and the same, queried Adam. Yes, 20 years sleeping on the sand with the stars in my face has taught me that it is the same with you. No, I grant all that you contend for the desert and for nature, but I can't reconcile nature and God. Nature's cruel, inevitable, hopeless, but God must be immortality. Once feel there's something divine in some men, but not in all, nor in many. So how can that divinity be God? The immortality you speak of, that is only your life projected into another life. You mean if I do not have a child, I will not have immortality? Exactly. But what of my soul? But what of my soul? Demanded Adam. Dismukes dropped his shaggy head. I don't know. I've gone to sleep, but I can't go any deeper. That always stumps me. I've never found my soul. Maybe finding my soul would be finding God. I don't know. And you once, Phil. Once I said you had the spirit of and a mind to find God on the desert, did you? Adam shook his head. I'm no farther than you, Dismukes, though I think differently about life and death. I fought to live on this wasteland, but I've fought hardest to think. Seems that always nature strikes me with its terrible mace. I have endless hours to look at the desert, and I see what you see. The strange ferocity of it all, the fierce purpose. No wonder you say the desert stamps a man. I and a woman too. Take this she-devil who runs a place here in Tecopa. Mojave Joe is the name she bears. Have you seen her? No, but I've heard of her. At Needles I met the wife of a miner, Clark, who'd been killed here at Tecopa. Never heard of Clark, but I don't doubt the story. It's common enough, miners being killed and robbed. There's a gang over in the Panamints who live on miners. I'm curious to see, Mojave Joe, said Adam. Well, speaking of this one-eyed harridan reminds me of a man I met last trip across the Salton Flats down on the Colorado. Met him at Walter's, a post on the stage line. He had only one eye, too. There was a terrible scar where his eye, the right one, had been. He was one of those Texans looking for a man. There seems to be possibilities of a railroad opening up that part of the desert. And this feller quizzed me about water holes. Of course, if anyone gets hold of a water in that country, he'll strike it rich as gold if the country ever opens up. It's likely to happen too. Well, this man had an awful face. He'd been a sheriff in Texas, someone said, and later at Ehrenberg. He's hell on hanging men. Of course, I never asked him how he lost his eye. But he told me, spoke of it more than once. The deformity had affected his mind. You meet men like that, sort of crazy or something. He was always looking for the fellow who'd knocked out his eye to kill him. Do you recall his name? Adam asked, his voice halting with a thick sensation in his throat. The past seemed as yesterday. I never was much on remembering names, responded Dismuke, scratching his shaggy head. Let's see. Why, yes, he called himself Collis Hall. That's it, Collis Shaw. Hard name to remember, but as a man, he struck me easy to remember. Well, friend Wansfeld, I've had enough talking to do me for a spell. I'm going to bed. End of chapter 12, part 2.